So the panel session is titled From Deck to Dialogue, Enhancing Regional Leadership to Facilitate Migrant Fishers-Led Advocacy for Rights-Based Protection in ASEAN under the Global Seafood Supply Chain. We are gathered here to explore how regional leadership in ASEAN, combined with fisher-led advocacy, can advance rights-based protection in the global seafood supply chain. My name is Filza Nabila, and I am the Oceans Campaigner for Legal and Human Rights at Greenpeace Indonesia, Southeast Asia also. I will be moderating today's session. Before we begin, a few housekeeping items. First, please silence your mobile phone. And if you are joining virtually, you may submit your questions or comments via Zoom. And we will follow this order of business for the session. First, we will have a very short video introduction. And then we will have 4 presentations from our distinguished panelists that are sitting over here. And then we will have discussant reflections and then Q&A from the floor. Please also make sure when you are asking questions or when you want to speak in the forum, please make sure that you are speaking into the mic so that everyone, especially those on the Zoom, can see and hear. And we aim to keep to time to ensure everyone has a chance to speak. All right, so without further ado, and to set the stage, we want to begin with a short video that frames some of the key issues that we'll be highlighting for the day. Just some slight technical issue. We'll be right back with you.
Dit, help me, Dit.
Help!
Indonesia! Indonesia!
Anak buah kapal asal Indonesia ditemukan meninggal di kapal penangkap ikan berbendera Tiongkok.
Dan nebak dari pertama memang ini kayak perdagangan manusia nih.
Ya sekarang kantornya nggak ada, mau nunggunya gimana?
Pelayaran ngenes.
Pelayaran penderitaan.
1 ton mancing bongkar itu 1 ton saya dihargai
Itu setara Rp2.000.
Tidak banyak orang tahu di tengah-tengah kita ini meningkatkan produksi ikan misalnya, orang tidak tahu bahwa itu juga ditopang oleh satu praktek eksploitasi yang sangat luar biasa.
Orang tahun orang nyandar.
Kita kan kayak di penjara sih, kanan kiri laut. Yang tipu pun bukan orang mereka sendiri katanya, dari agensi kalian.
Intinya perpedoman sama ini.
Keinget saya itu lembaran kosong, cuman kertas. Pas pulang bintang-bintang sudah nggak ada lagi tuh, yang saya bingung juga.
Apa tuh kalian ini?
Kenapa ya, orang tuanya udah nggak ada.
Sebenarnya kan 6 bulan sekali nyandar.
tapi anaknya yang bertahun-tahun ditinggal melaut kemudian kembali ke Indonesia hanya jasad. Itu kalau pulang, kalau dilarut.
Merasa terobati gitu kalau ada jasadnya. Kalau sekarang kan saya nggak lihat jasadnya, nggak lihat apanya, kan perasaan masih hidup.
All right, so what we just watched on the screen was the trailer for a 2022 documentary. It's called Before You Eat. It is produced by the Indonesian Migrant Workers Union, or Serikat Buruh Migran Indonesia, SBMI. It tells stories of Indonesian fishers on industrial fishing vessels, about how many of them were subjected to forced labor practices, not only on board, but also during the recruitment and all the way until they have returned to Indonesia. Some of them died, and their bodies were not returned to their families. They were asked to sign blank papers, which they later found out were some sort of contract documents. And there are many other stories out there, which include real footage from the fishers when they worked at sea. And if you're interested in watching it, you can find it online or in our booths. Fast forward to today, and nothing much has changed in the way industrial fishing vessels practice. However, what's changed in the past few years is that there has been a growing trend where more and more migrant fishers stand up, fight for justice, and contribute to the movement themselves that aims to create systemic change within the global industrial fishing. Now, to introduce our panel, we have four panelists over here. The first one, we have Rizky from the Indonesian Migrant Workers Union, or SPMI. The second one, we have Dr. Banu Batra Jitiang from Thai ICHER. We will also have Pruksa Singapore, or Pat, from EJF Thailand. And we have Benjamin Harkins from ILO Ship to Shore. And to highlight the Fisher-led advocacy movement, I would like to start our panel by introducing Rizky, our first speaker from SBMI. Rizky Octaviana, a former migrant fisher, endured forced labor, denial of basic needs, and wrongful detention in South Africa without ever receiving wages. Since 2014, he has worked with SBMI, advocating for migrant fishers' rights and combating forced labor, trafficking, and modern slavery through case support and public campaigning. Please welcome Rizky. Please take the floor.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you for allowing me to speak in it. It's such been an honor. A lot of my colleagues as well. We work been so long with the migrants visa issue, especially. Okay, without further ado, so I would like to do a presentation about the how migrant visa, especially me as a former migrant visa, can lead the advocacy or the movement to do their rights or policies to change the policies in the national and regional level. Next, please. Yeah, this is my organization profile, the Union of Indonesian Workers. All our member and staff was migrant workers and also the candidate of migrant workers. And we already have like 9 overseas representative, which is in Taiwan, the most like lots of migrant visa working and lots of recruitment agency also working based in those country. Next one, Karen. So, of course, because we are a union, our perspective is like we speak, believe what we experience based on the real story. Like before we start this presentation, you already seen what is really happening in the HISIS, especially the working condition about the migrant visa itself while they working on the vessel, and also our strength came from the grassroots. So SBMI national level is based in Jakarta, but we also have branches not only in overseas but also in Indonesia. We have like almost like over than 100 branches all over Indonesia. Next. And this is the realities at the sea. Since 10 years back, while when I was working as a fisherman or migrant fisher on the fishing vessel, we still found that until today, it's been like 10 years from like 2014, 2024, and based on our annual report last year, and also Sibontri collaborate with Greenpeace Indonesia as well, we still found out like long hours, the problems, long hours with not much rest while they're working on the fishing vessel, without wages, they bonded, physical and verbal abuse, and also unsafe vessel and lack of medical care. I was concerned about the medical care while the worker had been injuries in the vessel. Most likely they don't have like proper treatment. They just gonna, or even if they really hurt or if they like couldn't continue their work, the captain sometimes still force them to do their work. But in other case, like they need like they need like hospital, and the captain sometimes refuse it to go to the line to get the migrant visa treatment as well. And also, as we know together, there is no internet or Wi-Fi on the vessel at the moment. Like some of them already have, but some of the vessel doesn't have yet about the Wi-Fi. And also, because this is in high sea, and I feel that time we felt like we are like in the prison. Like, you know, when you're working on the fishing vessel, you don't know where to go, rather than you jump on the ISIS while you got the abuse from the captain or from the bosun, or what we call it, like the second hand in charge in the vessel. We don't have any choice. Rather than we fight back, we kill the captain, either we jump off the board and we die, uh, bitten by the shark probably, or like by the wave or storm, or even sometimes if the storm come over, like really the season like not really friendly with us, we still continuing our work at that time. Yeah. Next, Kieran. And this is our milestones since like 10 years back. So we have like a president commitment ratified C11 working in fishing. This was happening on May Day this year. It's been so long. We do campaign and advocacy for this ratified convention ILO 188 working in fishing. So like SBMI and Greenpeace and also like Indonesian worker networking at that time since 10 years back, we are collaborate. We do every single thing to Indonesian government to ratify this convention. But there is nothing like, there is like not a goodwill from the state to ratify the convention. We don't know why, but we never like, we still put pressure to the government to ratify in order to provide the protection of the migrant visa itself. That's our purpose. And also, there is one important moment last year on November in Constitutional Court in Indonesia has been ruling affirming the migrant visa rights, which is at that time, it's look like there is another union like put this case to do a judicial review about the case. So we've been fight. There is a law, the national law number 18 2017. They mention about and they acknowledge the migrant visa is a migrant workers. Yeah, and before this law has been ruled or has been issued by the government on 2017, back before this had been issued by the government, SBM and also with the Greenpeace and with all the Indonesian networking, we've been fight like for over than 5 years. We have the law number 39 2004 about the migrant workers before, but they don't acknowledge a migrant visa is a migrant workers. At that time, it was my cases, it was my cases. We tried a lot of things to deal with my cases. We went to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They don't even really care about our case. We went to the Ministry of Labor. They say because we are work in a fishing industry, we have to go to Ministry of Fisheries. And we went to Ministry of Fisheries. Ministry of Fisheries say like, oh, this is not our jurisdiction because you are as a seafarer, we have to go to the Ministry of Transportation and the same thing. That's why at that time we have an idea with Indonesian networking at that time, and one of the team who made the deal or negotiation with the parliament, it was me. So I know exactly what we put on this um, case here. Like migrant visa is a migrant worker because why? They work overseas, they have a contract, and they have everything. But why they never get their rights when they have a problem? The victories came from the union effort, not like state goodwill. Like I mentioned before, like we should, Indonesian government supposed to ratify the convention if they have a will, but they don't have it till now. And why grassroots mobilization is better? Because if we have to wait for the government, it's so slow and it's not incomplete. That's why we as a officer, we really have like high demand, or we make a pressure to the government to ratify the convention ILO 1811. And fiscal forces and policies remain on paper only if you not involving like, so what's the point you make a policies without involving the officer? I mean, the visitors, they really know what they do, and they really know what is been challenging for them, what is been like they're facing on the vessel, or before, even before they work overseas, they had been exploited, manipulated, sometimes withholding document, or sometimes they have to pay like a lot of money before they're working overseas. So in our opinion, we should well, actually, we already done it, but sometimes the government doesn't invite us to make like input or comment on the policies or draft the policies. And if they can like involving us for the future, we wish they can like good perspective. I mean, on the in order to protect the migrant visa, but we know we can do it by ourselves in Indonesia, but we also need like all the stakeholders like communicate or networking together to make a pressure not only in Indonesia but in the placement country as well. Next turn. And this is about the solidarity cases we had been working on like lately with Greenpeace Indonesia. We support for Indonesian migrant fisher who had been sued the international, the Americans seafood giant. As you know, like later I will mention about it. And this is not the will from us, because we found out there is a lot of similar case or common case had been going on since 10 years back, and it's still happening. Like for me, on my daily basis, I'm advocating migrant visa, and I'm reflecting myself like it had been like since my time, since 2014, and it's still happening. But where is the obligation from the government side or from the recruitment agency? We don't see nothing, right? At that time, uh, of course, we need like international NGOs working together. Like for example, in here, in my cases, the ILO and IOM have the key point to an important point and critical point to help the migrant visitors in overseas. For example, in my cases, like I was rescued by IOM and ITF in South Africa. They put me on the jail on the charge of IUU, illegal fishing. I don't even know IUU at that time. Come on, like I'm just come to work, and they set me up. They left the vessel, 74% of them, they just left us without nothing. And the border and the port authorities, immigration come to us, ask, oh, I have to put you on detention center because you overstay. What do you mean? And you did illegal fishing. I don't even understand at the time what is illegal fishing means, right? Just unfair for us. And this is our call to ASEAN. So, tripartite forum, meaningful participation by involving union for monitoring and evaluate what is really happening on the policies, on the fact what is migrant visa face problems, and ASEAN human rights institution like ICHR probably you can activate on forced labor issue, and especially for visa who came from ASEAN country, not only Indonesia, and they work for the foreign fishing vessel. So I mean, like, come on, we are ASEAN. We need to support each other to do a protection. So, like, it's been like over than 10 years. We've been like many meetings, many discussion, but nothing legally binding. Come on, make it statement. I mean, like, you can make like guidelines. Yeah, you have guidelines, but there is nothing legally binding. Come on, we have to make like legally binding and support each other within Asian country, right? Next. And this is the message for the buyers and to the brand and the market. They have to ensure process of migrant visa based on human rights standard. I mean, by human rights standard, I know you all like expert in this human right issue, right? But this is like, it's not quite simple, but it's simple for me. But I don't know why it's so complicated to implement, like recruitment fee. You can deal with it. I mean, the brand or the recruitment agency, they can cover all the recruitment fee for the candidate of migrant visa, and also for the protection before they're leaving, and they have to like guarantees the migrant visa when they have problem or they're facing problem in the placement country. As we know, when the migrant visa like they're facing the problem in the placement country, as soon as they found out the recruitment agency or the market or the brands who buyers the fees, they're just gonna send or get rid of the victims. They just want, okay, we send it them straight up to their country, and well, we don't know anything. And as soon as they arrive in Indonesia, SBMI advocate them, and we face to face with the migrant with the recruitment agency, and they say, oh, this is not our problem, they're supposed to get their money before they're leaving. And after that, the migrant visa, they have to sign the blank document. There was mentioned nothing, but when we try to do advocate, there's a lot of the bondage. You have to pay the ticket. You have to pay you have to pay the medication, and etc. And also ethical recruitment as well. So this is my closing point. Important role by the fisher on the supply chains. Like I mentioned earlier, we need to involving the fisher to do how to make the policies, because this is so important. You only know, and you only feel it like by this article or by the video, but we as a fisher, we know exactly what we deal every single day. So please involving us on to do policies or the law for the visa. Support the fee. If it's also like support the visa for, yeah, for freedom of association. Some of them, they don't get the access when they try to speak up. Let's say to the captain, and the captain like after they spoke up, the captain like, oh, they're gonna mark this guy, and as soon as they touch the port, as soon as they land to the port, they will get like different treatment. For example, like they will not getting like their wages, the or rather than the company will send them back home. And the last one is ensure that workers' rights are fulfilled. I mean, in this context, like the recruitment agency or the state or the destination country, they have to make sure the migrant visa have their rights before they send them back home. It will be easy because we found out after the migrants visa went home, there is a lot of problem coming. And that's it from me. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Mas Rizky, for that illuminating presentation, especially with the advancement of migrant fishers' rights through President's commitment to ratify ILO C-188 on works in fishing and different forms of advocacy. So not only the conventional advocacy of having meaningful participation with related institutions, but also through litigation, for example, be it a judicial review to affirm migrant fishers' rights, or through a transnational litigation where four Indonesian fishers who experienced forced labor on board fishing vessels demanding corporate responsibility from the market states through global fishing supply chain. And these victories will not happen if it were not for the coalition effort. So for our next speaker, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Banu Batra, Thailand's representative to the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights. His Excellency Assistant Professor Dr. Banupatra Jitiang is the current representative of the Thailand to the ASEAN, to ICHR. He sits on Thailand's National Steering Committee on Human Rights and the National Screening Committee under the Prime Minister's regulation on the screening of aliens unable to return to their country of origin. His expertise spans from forced migration, refugee studies, atrocity prevention, transnational security, human rights, and international development. Dr. Banu Batra will talk about norm building through the ASEAN Declaration and regional leadership to strengthen human rights architecture. Dr. Banu Batra.
Thank you so much. Feel free to call me Khan. I'm just going to start by saying that, like, it's my fourth session of the day that I've been sitting. So if, like my voice is going to be very low and not energetic anymore, my apologies. Second of all, I think it's really important for me to hear from Risky, because I always say since this morning that, like in all these different panels, rather than having me sitting here, it should have been people who are affected and have this experience be the one that say it. Because at the end of the day, what we can do more is to involve not simply just having their voice or representations, but let them engage in all these different activities and so on and so forth. So that's one of the key things I really want to emphasize, and that's always been by the priorities for me as a Thailand representative to the body. Talking about ASEAN norm setting is you are hitting the wall all the time, basically, right? Talking about ASEAN, it's always about limits and challenges. And that's what I'm going to say again. But the reason why I will keep saying that was because of this is something that it's provide room for all of us to think about how we can engage and actually work together. So for the past several years, it's exactly like what Risky has been mentioning. We have been a lot of documents coming out, declarations. We have declarations on the placement and protection of migrant fishers. We have ASEAN consensus. We have guidelines, and we're going to issue more guidelines and so on. The key question is, does it lead us anywhere in terms of the implementations? Because of the key question is that these guidelines stands there on the top of the ivory tower, but it doesn't get translated into actions. So how exactly we're going to be able to actually take those forward and really make it actionable? And I think that is something that, like within the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, we are trying to do more. Of course, our mandate is consultative, but even with that consultative framework that we are having limits, we are also trying to design different ways and different things to show how protection can also be done even at the events. So some of the steps and the key challenge I just going to mention while taking those challenge as a way forward for us really thinking about things together. So rather than talking about norm setting per se, because we already have lots of norms there in ASEAN, but how to make those norms become implementable, it's a key part of what I'm going to say. Number one, we have consensus, we have non-interference, we have working in silos, and so on and so forth. AISHA, as ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, we are one of the only two bodies in ASEAN that can really go cross-sectoral, cross-pillar. What does it mean? It means that we can provide technical assistance and also obtain information from states and so on and so forth on the protection itself. So what we can do is that even though the term of reference, our term reference, hasn't been reviewed for the past 15 years, supposed to be done 5 years after it was established, it had never been done. But still, through these mandates that we already have at the moment, it could be something that a stepping stone for us to really think about, for example, our activities that we do, the regional dialogues, right? Rather than being a one-off events, this could be a chance for us to develop different tool and capacity building and capacity and to work closely with different parties. So, for example, in the past years, what we did when I started my positions earlier in January, we involve voices of migrant workers in the events right away, because of what we see is that it's not the voice of those representatives of the states that matters anymore. It's also the voice of those who are affected, that we need to integrate it more and let them be part of the co-creations of these solutions together. Because as Risky said, like sometimes we sit in the aircon, we don't even know the conditions of work, and they never go on the grounds, do research, and do those kind of things. While people are there affected by all this different experience, so they are the one that know the issue, know the real condition, know the situations. So integrating them in the co-creation of solutions becomes something that I think it's really important. So to go beyond the consensus, of course, is there, but through these different dialogues, through these different conversations, that how protection could also be done, while we're not even talking about protection in the sense of while we are still developing some other mechanisms for the time being, given the limits that we actually have. Second things, when I'm talking about a norm setting here also is that it is really the limit in terms of the, as Richie said, legal binding, right? Most of the time it's a lot of resistance, but we have to rethink how ASEAN consensus or even non-interference should be rethink in the face of the immense the issues that are severe to our regions. For years, trafficking has always been there, and we got lots of complaints right now already in place from the special rapporteur, from others, and so on and so forth, that coming into us. What we did was put it there in the communications, not responding at all. So this year, moving forward, what under Malaysia chairmanship also, what we're trying to do is to rebuild the complaint mechanism. And actually next week, we're going to have a workshop discussing about these complaint mechanisms, specifically how it should look like. The current system that we have is that the complaints, once it's come in, people, it depends on representative of these different ASEAN member states. They're going to report or, to, contact the different agencies and then report it back to Aisha. What I did on the part of Thailand was that I contacted the relevant agencies, meaning that different agencies that involved in that particular issues, as well as the National Human Rights Commission of Thailand, to get both sides of the stories and situations. So at least those things are get in records of Aisha. Whether or not things get taken forward, but that could be something that we can rethink, because of now this complaint can be the starting point for different dialogues to actually happen. So that's the second way, is to actually doing it, the consultative that was supposed to be done for quite some time. So that's the thing that we have been thinking about. But I think the third part, which is something that we really need in our region, is a multi-pronged approach. What am I talking about here is that, sometimes we talk about human rights as an abstract ideas in a national level, while we didn't really do it, localize it into having some champion in not just in the country level, but in the city level, or even within some of the company level. That's why we're talking about champion in the business and human rights. How are we going to be able to strengthen the idea of champion across the regions? So we can have a state as a champion, we can have a business as a champion, but at the same time, we also have a worker as a champion as well. And why am I talking about a worker as a champion here? I got some information that we look back into the statistic from IJM Thailand. It says that, to a large extent, many times when migrant fisheries have problems, they do not know whom to contact. And that's 48% out of the people that was in that research. What does it mean? It means that if we're going to create a champion, we also have to do it in the level of the workers, to at least have, for example, the paralegal among them, get them trained, who they can run to if there are situations like this happen in different of those areas. And then from there, like we can start it to have a systems that is a top down, is a bottom up approach, For while we are also trying to hold, the business to respect and to have the state protect the rights of migrant fishers more and more as well. So that multi-pronged approach, I think it's really important. But at the same time, at the state level, I think that one thing we need to overcome also is a conversation about sending and receiving states. Because of that's always a big debate that has always been like, because of these different states, they do not see the issue the same way. While the sending states would like to do more, the receiving state would try to say, well, we don't want to actually take much action because of it can affect the competitiveness and so on and so forth. So how are we going to be able to align the interests of both the sending and the receiving states? So I think this is something that it's going to be another key part to really think about. And last but not least, I think that um, a platform like what we are having today, it's really important. And Aisha, through my body, we can really offer that platform to have different particular bodies to actually take parts. Because of our role, as I said, we are doing only consultative work most of the time. But through this consultative work, we can convene. We have ASEAN proud themselves to be able to convene. But rather than taking those platforms, like for example, in the upcoming years, this business and human rights platform like this one can turn into a place where we show exactly how protections can be done on spot. What exactly National Human Rights Commission would do in the case when it involves a person of migrant fishes? What would you do? So these are the kind of activities that we are doing more because at the end of the day, it let those states or even those involved realize that what are the actual gaps. So these allow us to actually do the activity in terms of the simulations, for example, to play those different role plays, so to speak, in a way. So those kind of creative ideas that we started to inject it into our forum. So in that sense, in Aisha, for example, it allows us to really see, oh, eventually we don't have any mechanisms at all. And that's why we need certain things more, even though there are guidelines, documents, and so on and so forth written down already there. But all these different things, it's not there. And I want to repeat finally that the one thing that I mentioned in my previous panel, that the task that we are facing at the moment is to ensure that migrant workers in ASEAN are treated with dignities and fairness. And that business practice also, that driving also our economy do not come at the expense of human rights. Because if we cannot balance that, eventually, like we're gonna keep these conversations, having this conversation over and over and over again. And then at the end of the day, what else could we do more, right? Because we are entering into the same cycles of that. So in that sense, if ASEAN is going to be truly driven in moving forward to have a people-centered ASEAN and having a shared values together as a community, I think we, as Risky said, we just need to really sit down and think what it means to have ASEAN to begin with, and what we can do more to our people within the region. So I would end it there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Khan, for sharing about room to engage and working together with different institutions and different stakeholders. I think some of the key challenges Khan has already identified, like consensus, non-interference, and working in silo, and the reform to rebuild the complaint mechanism so that ICHR can contact both sides of complaint to have different dialogue and have that in record as part of the consultative dialogue. He also mentioned about the multi-pronged approach of localizing human rights through having regional champion and not only state, but also businesses and workers. And we now hear from Pat from the Environmental Justice Foundation, Thailand. Pat oversees campaign operations focused on ocean conservation and fisheries transparency. In this capacity, she manages projects, staff, and resources across Thailand and the region, guiding research, fostering strategic partnerships, and advocating for policy changes with government and industry stakeholders. Pat will talk about civil society roles, focusing on transparency and accountability, and more importantly, linking supply chain pressures to human rights protections. Please, Pat.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. So it's very encouraging to hear from Aisha representatives talk about different mechanisms and solutions that we'd be able to implement in the future to make sure that all of the existing laws and regulations be able to effectively translate it into practice. So thank you very much for that. My presentation will come in and fit into that space very well because I would like to dig a little bit deeper into the Thailand case study. And we are going to talk about the enforcement and implementation after the Thailand's historic move in C-188 ratification since 2019. As part of the wider regional commitment through the ASEAN Declaration on the Placement on the Protection of Migrant Fishes, I would like to begin my presentation by acknowledging Thailand's huge success and progress in ratifying C-188, along with the Protocol 29. That was a historic move for the country. Although the years of adoptions are different, but the substance embedded into these instruments are closely aligned. C-188 provide a very clear standards for the country in ensuring the decent working condition for the workers in fishery sector. That includes the safety, the accommodation, the contracts, and also the protection of forced labor. And I think that is one of the regional case study that we can look into both the success and existing challenges and also the shared barriers that we are facing. And we can think about how we can overcome these barriers together. All right, so a little bit about EGF. We are the registered organization in UK. We've been actively working in Southeast Asia since 2014, starting to work in Thailand and then expand the work into Indonesia in 2017, if I remember the year correctly. Yeah, that's probably right. Our mandate and mission is to drive the environmental justice by providing, by protecting nature and the people who depend on it. And that includes combating IUU fishing and human rights abuses. We also advocate for the regional adoption of transparency principles. We work with a wide range of actors from civil society organizations to the policymakers, parliamentarians, and also the international missions. And next slide, please. And this back one slide, please. The diagram, the cycle. Yeah, the previous one. All right. Next one, please. Yes, that's one. Thank you. Yeah, I would like to show you this diagrams. It represents the transboundary issues that beyond the national sovereignty and jurisdiction and require the regional and stronger regional cooperation. Let's put it in that way. So this shows the destructive practice in which the IUU fishing and human rights abuses are deeply intertwined, starting with the overfishing at the center here, driven by the IUU fishing, of course. And with this overfishing leads to the fish stock depletion. And what would happen next? Fish stock depletion would pressure the operator, unscrupulous operator, to race to the bottom. That adds the operation costs, and that includes the cost of labor. So they will do whatever it takes in order to cut that cost down. And that's where the exploitation happens in the fishery sector. So the many fishers, many migrant fishers, they are experiencing the unfair wages, unsafe working conditions, so on and so forth, as what Risky mentioned already. So it's the vicious cycle. It's unbreakable. It's still an ongoing challenges that everyone in this room are facing. So we all facing risks. And if we don't have an immediate solution together at regional level, at the ASEAN level, and also at the national level, we all lose. Not to mention the increased market volatility influenced by the tariff and non-tariff barrier. Recently, Thailand has experienced US tariff, and that makes the business sector has to think more thoroughly what would be the better solution. How can we survive this situation? So, and now let's take a look at what actually happened at the deck. So that's the name of the session, right? Next slide, please. I'd like to show you some of the findings, and the investigation findings conducted by our organization from 2024 to 2025. This is based on the interviews of 117 interview with the migrant fishers who work on over 50 Thai fishing vessels across the countries. And this review the worrying trend and the prevalence of the forced labor allegations. We use the ILO forced labor indicator as the assessment reference, and it shows that over 20% of them experience physical abuses. Over 95% of them still experience document retention and long working hours. So that's the statistically confirmed how awful the situation is. Not to mention another 80% also still experience the very poor living and working conditions. We really want to be wrong, but our finding is not isolated sample. There are many other credible local organizations who also publish the reports and share the similar trends and worrying prevalence in the Thai fishing sector. And what does it mean by that? It means that many migrant fishers, they are still trapped in the system that failed to protect them. And it shows that gratification is just the first step. There are an aftermath. There are the follow-up work that need to be done at all levels to make sure that the regulations, the laws on papers will be able to fully implement it and effectively enforce it. So next, please. These are the fishers' testimonies. I think we can take a few seconds to quietly read and reflect what have been written on the screen. So yeah, it's heartbreaking to still experience this situation firsthand, even though Thailand has already ratified a very advanced convention since 2019. So it confirms that it's still a work in progress. There's so much more that needs to be done in terms of collaborative mechanism, participation mechanism to ensure that this situation would be addressed more effectively. The first quote on up above confirms the situation of physical abuse. Then down below, it confirms the situation regarding the document retention. Next, please. All right. This also some of the sample that recently taken by our investigator in Chumphon provinces in September this year. What is this? Can you guess? It's the trawler. It's the illegal fishing practice. It's still ongoing. It's happening in the prohibited area in IEC zone. So we just want to share that the environmental degradation still fuels the labor abuses and is confirmed the vicious cycle that is still unbreakable until we have a more effective solution for this. Next, please. Also, there's also illegal fishing, IUU fishing, happening so close to the shore. This was taken from the beach, so you can imagine how close this is to the shore. Next, please. All right, now let's take a look at the market implication. All of this worrying trend and situation regarding the IUU fishing and forced labor situation in Thai fishing sector happen concurrently with the attempt from Thai government try to amend or drive change in terms of the legislation. In particular, we are in the process of amending the Royal Ordinance on Fisheries and related sub-regulations, which consists of a number of worrying and concerning articles. And if adopted and implemented, that will risk our seafood export product entering and contaminated by the abuse and exploitation and entering to the world market. And this pie chart represents the top 15 countries of the import countries of Thai seafood products, and most of which, like 50% of them, went to the market like US, Japan, or EU, all of which have the stringent import regulations, IUU forced labor regulations. And I would like to show you one more thing about the market and the global buyer responses regarding this situation. Next slide, please. Next, please. So here, this is the quote from one of the major global seafood buyer, Seafood Task Force, quote unquote. The purchasing decisions are significantly affected by reputational and legal risks. And it's now unclear. I don't have to read all of this. You can read it by yourself, and I can share the presentation with you later on. But this is a warning sign, and the world is not only watching us anymore. They are taking action. And it shows that we need to take immediate action in order to mitigate the risks that potentially to happen. The seafood export, that is the value of this market worth almost like 5 billion USD. So that's a huge market. And as I mentioned earlier, increased market vitality, tariff, non-tariff barriers. And now we have to make sure that we be able to implement ethically and sustainably to make sure that our product will be able to reach to the import states. Next, please. This is what EJF and other civil society organizations would like to propose, and we've been advocating for this for quite a long period of time. It's a so-called global charter for fisheries transparency. In order to break that vicious cycle that I showed earlier, transparency is key. And this charter is a set of 10 policy principles aimed at promoting the disclosure of vessel and crew information, vessel activity at sea, who doing what on sea, underwater, and make sure that we can ensure the traceability and transparency from the deck to the dining table. And also it involves the inclusive governance of fishery management, make sure that information will be shared meaningfully to multiple stakeholders, research that being conducted will be done through the co-creation process, thorough consultative process. So all of these are included as part of the policy guidance, and we believe that it will complement the existing ASEAN policy and regulations very well. And with this implementation and if we be able to have a more dialogue and space or platform to discuss in terms of, like what would be the next step or what are the technical requirements in order to implement or adopt the global charter for fishery transparency more effectively, that would be greatly appreciated. And we believe that this could be one of the solutions to close the door on IUU fishing and forced labor. Thank you very much. And I would like to stop my presentation here.
Thank you very much, Pat, for your presentation. Some of the things that I've noted from Pat's presentation is that migrant fishers are still trapped in a system that cannot protect them. And even with the Thailand's ratification to ILO C-188, forced labor is not necessarily eliminated overnight. It's a work in progress, and the direction of that progress is on the hand of related stakeholders that is directly linked to UNGPBHR, the state's duty to protect and corporate responsibility to respect human rights. Our final speaker is Benjamin Harkins from the ILO Ship to Shore program in Southeast Asia. Since arriving in Southeast Asia for more than 17 years ago, Ben has worked to support greater social justice for migrants, refugees, and other marginalized people within the region. He is now the technical specialist for the ILO Ship to Shore Rights Southeast Asia program, a UN interagency initiative addressing safe migration and descent work in the fishing and seafood processing sectors. Ben will be sharing lessons learned from the Ship to Shore Rights Southeast Asian program in promoting decent work, social dialogue, and labor inspection and fishing. Please, Ben.
Yeah, thank you very much. Always great to be the very last speaker of the day, but I'll do my best. I want to start by thanking Greenpeace Southeast Asia and the Environmental Justice Foundation for inviting me to speak on this panel. I'm here representing the Ship to Shore Rights Southeast Asia program. We are an EU-funded initiative led by the ILO and implemented by IOM and FAO as well. For those who might not be familiar, Ship to Shore Rights started back in 2016, and we contributed quite substantially to Thailand's reforms of its fishing industry, including the ratification of the Work and Fishing Convention, ratification of the Protocol to the Forced Labor Convention, and the establishment of port in and port out centers for inspection of fishing vessels. Today, in particular, I was asked to speak a little bit about the Work and Fishing Convention, or C188, which, as many of you know, is an extremely important standard because it responds directly to many of the key decent work deficits that we see within the region's fishing industry. It also has the great benefit of being one of the most recent international labor standards adopted, and therefore it's highly relevant to the current context of working conditions for fishers in the region. At the ILO, we particularly, of course, welcome the recent commitments made by Vietnam and Indonesia to move towards ratification of C188. We certainly hope that all of the countries within ASEAN will make similar commitments in the near future. That said, I do want to say there's no single convention that is a magic bullet for the deeply entrenched problems with poor working conditions in Southeast Asia's fisheries. We've seen that Thailand's ratification can be a very important step forward in addressing decent work deficits, but yes, indeed, implementation remains a major challenge. As a key bellwether, the Royal Thai government and key stakeholders were required to report on progress in application of C188 back in 2021. And in fact, to date, the Thai government hasn't submitted that report. The ITF's submission suggests that significant gaps remain in adherence to the convention standards, particularly in relation to recruitment, working hours, wages, occupational safety and health, social protection, and other matters. I think Brother Risky spoke very eloquently already about the very important role of trade unions in improving working conditions for migrant fishers. I just want to emphasize how critical it is to expand freedom of association and collective bargaining for migrants here in Southeast Asia. Forced labor, when you look at it, it is almost always linked to restrictions on workers' ability to organize. And where these fundamental rights are denied to workers, they're not able to raise a collective voice, defend their interests, or positively influence their working conditions. And of course, that leaves them very vulnerable to exploitation. ILO has conducted research that demonstrated, of course, these restrictions for migrant workers exist in many countries around the world in terms of their ability to join trade unions and sign collective agreements to improve their working conditions. In some cases, those challenges arise from the lack of a legislative basis for freedom of association, but as well, it can be implementation gaps that hamper effective application of those rights in practice. In other cases, of course, there's simply very few trade unions active or operational in highly informal and hard to reach sectors like fishing. And that as well can limit, of course, migrant workers' ability to organize. Here in Thailand, there actually have been some positive developments in relation to organizing of migrant fishers. So the Fishers' Rights Network was established in 2017 by the International Transport Workers Federation. It's now comprised of over 5,000 migrant fishers from Cambodia and Myanmar, and it was formed following direct consultations with fishers to assess their needs, and then they went ahead and established 5 organizing centers in key port areas in Thailand. The network has focused really on issues that are key to its membership, and that includes things like provision of first aid kits, safety training, signing collective agreements on occupational safety and health, observing port in, port out inspections to make sure that they're conducted effectively, and advocacy, of course, on migrant fishers' rights. In addition, migrant workers in Thailand's fishing and seafood processing sectors are increasingly forming workers' organizations kind of under the umbrella of Thai trade unions and CSOs. For example, the Migrant Workers Solidarity Community is a membership-based organization that's been organizing migrant workers in Samut Sakhon and Songkhla, particularly in the seafood processing sector. They kind of operate in a legal gray area at the moment, of course, and they're not typically able to sign legally binding collective bargaining agreements with employers, but they can provide very meaningful peer support, particularly with resolving fishers and other migrant workers' complaints. At the same time, of course, we've seen there's a proliferation of self-regulatory initiatives implemented by the private sector to address labor rights abuses in the fishing and seafood processing sectors. Of course, although these increased commitments to responsible business practices are very welcome from the private sector, what we've seen is that many of the certifications and auditing initiatives to date have not really been able to demonstrate substantive progress in improving conditions for migrant workers. I think it's becoming increasingly evident that over-reliance on voluntary mechanisms to generate change really creates a significant risk of superficial improvements rather than genuine accountability to workers. I think the lessons of history show there's really no effective alternative to providing migrant workers with their fundamental rights to fundamental rights to organize for a more balanced power relationship to be established with their employers. If we're going to achieve credible and sustainable progress towards decent work, it really requires that migrants are provided with their rights to form democratic and representative trade unions to bargain directly for better wages and working conditions. Removing the legal restrictions to freedom of association, supporting workers' organizations to take root and really flourish in the fishing industry, really badly needed to begin the process of rebalancing the scales towards greater social justice for migrant workers in Southeast Asia's blue economy. Finally, I just wanted to briefly conclude to talk about the recent developments in regional cooperation on work in fishing. During the Indonesian and Lao chairs of ASEAN, the Ship to Shore Rights Southeast Asia program supported the development of the ASEAN Declaration and Guidelines on the Placement and Protection of Migrant Fishers. Although, of course, as was stated, these are not legally binding instruments. They do elaborate a set of guiding principles for ASEAN countries on the normative policies, institutional mechanisms, programs, and services for ensuring a more rights-based governance approach. In practical terms, they will also enable regular work planning by the ASEAN Committee on the Rights of Migrant Workers to work towards better protection of migrant fishers' rights. Of course, as was noted by my colleague from AICHA, the big question with ASEAN instruments is always whether any substantive action will be taken to support their implementation. I think that the contents of both the ASEAN Declaration and Guidelines include many of the right steps to enhance labor and migration governance for the fishing sector. However, it's very important that key stakeholders involved remain really committed to ensuring that the rights and protections that are outlined in all of these instruments, yes, they sound very nice on paper, but they need to be actually realized by migrant fishers in practice. That's it for me, and thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Ben, for your presentation, and thank you to all four speakers. I realized that we're 5 minutes over time for our scheduled time. So for those who have other agendas after this, it's okay if you can leave the room. But since we are the last panel in this day, we kind of have the liberty to not get kicked out. So those who still want to participate in discussions and Q&A can stay over here, and those who have any agendas after this, it's okay, you can leave the room. So maybe now we can move to reflection of the key message, fisher-led advocacy, institutional framework, civil society engagement, and labor standards. Together, they help us map the challenges and promising ways toward rights-based protection. We have IOG representing Team 9 Coalition and Networks from Indonesia, one of the key leading coalition advocacy that wants to advocate for the ratification of C-188 in Indonesia. Please, we have Mbak Tasha over there. If you have any questions or remarks from all the panelists we have today.
Okay, thank you so much, Mbak Filza, for the opportunity. Hello, everyone. My name is Tasha. I'm from IOGI, also Indonesia Ocean Justice Initiative, a think tank and researcher for research organization focusing on equitable and sustainable ocean governance. So, one of the main topic that I'm interested in is regarding what the ICHR representative of Thailand said about the complaint mechanism. I appreciate the initiative because one of our findings, like the main obstacle faced by migrant fishers, is about the handling of their cases, especially about with the ultimate purposes on effective remedies. So in this regards, I would like to ask, like, what indicators can be used to measure the effectiveness of such mechanism? Furthermore, how will the mechanism address cases where the perpetrators are located outside the ASEAN region that is not ASEAN member state? And has ICHR encountered such cases in practice other than like Megan Fisher cases? And thank you so much for the other speakers also.
Thank you so much, Natasha, for your remarks. Can probably.
Yeah, so I was just going to respond quickly. So, as I said, we are currently in the process of developing this mechanisms right now, and next week, actually, 22nd, 23rd, we're going to have a big meeting on the mechanism itself, like how it's going to look like, and of course, it's not going to be done right away this time, but hopefully, like by the end of the year or next year, we're going to have it clearly laid out. But one thing that I think, if you look into other regional mechanisms for complaints, it will be at the level that it already exhausted the domestic means. Meaning that at the domestic levels, those remedies and recess cannot be achieved already. That it comes to regional mechanisms. But one thing that I really noticed and we really emphasize within Aisha more and more now is that the issues of trafficking is beyond already states, because of sometimes it's transboundary, it's transnational human rights issue basically. And I think this is something that we recognize the importance of that. So we will try our best to actually put that in. But again, as I said, because of the consensus and non-interference that we are facing also within my body itself, that makes sometimes the conversation really difficult. But again, we try our best to see how this going to take place. And then hopefully by the end of the year, you will see these mechanisms coming rolling out, because we're already developing the guidelines specifically on this. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Khan, for your remarks to respond to IOGI representing Team 9 Coalition. Unfortunately, since we're over time, I can only take one question. So, okay, the gentleman over there, please. Thank you very much for the question. For the panelists, which one of you want to respond to that question? Or do you have like any specific person that you want to get remarks from?
I will respond quickly. I think one thing that we already see in some of the practices with this is that there are now, I think just now before I came to these sessions, in the previous sessions, we are trying to think about the referral mechanisms. Try to see the way in which that we can even protect the people, particularly those victims. And then at the same time, in the context of the illegal detentions here, I think I'm not going to be able to comment on those specific issues in the context of India and Pakistan, and then also the rest in South Asia there. But then at least, like for the detention part specifically, if it's involved the children, in ASEAN right now, there are the development of another mechanism called the alternative to child detentions. So that one is already going to come out very soon under the ASEAN Commissions on Women's and Children's already. But again, the problem is going to be about the implementation part again. Even though there are already these beautiful right-based guideline on that, but how we're gonna sort that out? I think that may be a quite big questions on how we're gonna push the states, like to actually protect people more. So I think that leaves a big questions, also about coordination as well. But again, I really appreciate your inputs on that, because I think it needs to think more. Yeah, I mean on this issue. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Khan. And that concludes our session for the day. I want to thank our speakers, the discussant, and all of the participants for your, especially you, sir, for your valuable insight. We hope this dialogue will continue beyond this room and the virtual space and lead to concrete actions and strengthen the rights protection for migrant fishers in the region. Tomorrow, Greenpeace will have 2 more sessions at noon and in the afternoon, so please look out for that and come to the panel if you can. Thank you very much.